What is going on, everybody? It's your boy John, and welcome back to Gearbox. So, today, obviously, doing a little bit different of a video kind of setup. Want to do more talking than actually, doing things, if that makes sense. And really, you guys will come to find out. But really, the topic of discussion on this video can benefit from both talking about it and actually doing it. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. What I want to talk about today is how to drive a manual transmission well. I feel like, there's the basic, all right, clutch in, put it in gear, give it some gas, whatnot. There's a difference between knowing how to do it. I actually just taught my buddies how to drive manual transmission this weekend. But there's, the whole nother level of doing it well. So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to this topic is kind of two parts. One, understanding how a manual transmission works, and two, understanding gearing. The second one is what I want to focus on, especially as it relates to downshifting. So what do I mean there? Well, if you are driving a manual transmission car, obviously, given the name manual, you are manually rowing through first, second, third, maybe fourth, maybe fifth, and maybe sixth gear, just depending on the transmission. Now, while you're doing this, what some people who don't necessarily understand cars understand or get is that you're not just moving a lever to move a lever. You're changing the gears. So really, when it comes to driving, obviously you're going to start with the lowest gear, which has the highest amount of torque, but the lowest end as far as top speed goes, and then you go red line, shift, red line, shift, red line, shift. Now, when it comes to driving a manual well, you might hear terms thrown about like heel towing or rev match downshifting, whatever. And really what you're doing here is matching the engine speed to what the transmission speed needs to be at as you're downshifting to a lower gear. I guess typical rule of thumb is, in the WRX, for example, if you're going fourth to third gear, clutch in, put it to third, blip the throttle, and typically you're going to have a smooth downshift at about 1,000 RPMs above where you were. So if I'm in fourth gear at 3,000 RPMs, blip the throttle to 4,000 RPMs and drop it to third gear. That's going to make your driving much smoother. It's going to help, the longevity of the transmission, of the car in general. And it's very, very important. And guess what? Every car is different. And that's what's hard. But point number one, absolutely understand your gearing. All right, so the second point I want to touch on here, and I kind of, mentioned it in the first one, but the second point is going to be understanding throttle response, i.e. blipping your throttle. And this really applies to any time that you have the clutch engaged, right? So whether you're starting off, whether you're downshifting, whatever, if your foot is on the clutch at all, you need to have good throttle response. And once again, similar to the gearing stuff and just the overall rev matching and whatnot, every car is going to be different. But the more familiar you can get yourself with, all right, if I, blip the throttle this much, I get this much RPM rise. Or, as I'm starting out, whether it be on a flat surface or on a hill in a manual transmission, having the throttle, the touch of your throttle to be able to, accurately and effectively move from stop to start or move from fifth to fourth gear. It's just as important as understanding the clutch, which is definitely a part of it as well. But if you're not comfortable or confident with your throttle input, manual transmission is going to be, it's possible, but it's going to be difficult. And just like anything else, you learn by doing it. You learn by, time behind the steering wheel and XYZ platform. But once again, it all goes back to just having a good driving experience and being confident while driving a manual transmission. All right, so the third point I want to bring up here is going to be the exact opposite of what we just talked about with the throttle, and that's going to be your clutch, understanding your clutch. This one kind of hits near and dear to me. As you guys know, I just recently upgraded my clutch to a more aggressive clutch, but I also upgraded my flywheel to a lighter flywheel. And that's hard to explain. If you have, any questions or want to hear more about that, go to my ACT clutch video. I'll do a hell of a lot better of a job explaining it there than I will here. But really the big thing we're talking about when it comes to understanding your clutch is going to be the bite point. And for those who are unaware, you have your clutch pedal on the left. This is completely engaged. You push the clutch pedal in and you separate the clutch. Now, what we mean by bite point, so the engine is going over here. As you start to let off your clutch, the clutch is going to get closer and closer to the engine and start, rubbing against each other to essentially meld the engine to the transmission and put power down. Once that clutch starts to touch here, that's what we call the bite point. And that's extremely important when, once again, driving a manual transmission well. This comes into play in all areas of driving a transmission, but most notably is obviously going to be, moving from a full stop. So you'll start to get an idea of, okay, I've got my leg extended here with the clutch pushed in. Once I get to maybe here, it's going to start going together. And what's also important here is once it starts to bite, don't drop it, okay? There's a lot more pressure that needs to be applied, and if you just drop it once it starts biting, you might as well go join the PBR rodeo because it's not going to be fun. For the WRX, it's pretty straightforward. With my new clutch, it's a little bit different, but either way, you'll have some bite points that are really low. You'll have some that are in the middle, which I would say is the WRX, and then you'll have some that are high. Once again, it's all a feel thing, and unfortunately, there's no, direct answer on your bite point is going to be here, and I get that. But once again, it's something that's really important to not only know is a thing, but also to feel it out and try to, grasp that concept, no pun intended, when it comes to driving your manual transmission as well as you possibly can. All right, so the fourth point I want to talk about today is an overarching theme in really anything you do. I know this applies to me being a pilot as well, but especially driving a manual transmission. And that is being smooth in your inputs. Whether it's clutch, whether it's, gas, whether it's brake, all of it needs to be smooth. Don't think of it as, just dropping the clutch, jamming the throttle, jamming the brake. It's kind of a dance of some sort, especially if you go and look up videos of, professional drifters, rally car drivers, any driver who utilizes a manual transmission. You see their feet just going all over the place. But when it comes to and assuming that we're all just, normal car guys who don't necessarily race all the time and whatnot, being smooth is huge. And this goes back to previous points, being smooth in your gas inputs, being smooth as you transition that clutch. If you're heel towing, being smooth as you roll your foot, over from the brake to blip the throttle. There's a lot of feel that comes to that, and once again, it takes time. So don't expect yourself to be great at it right off the rip. But guess what? The smoother the inputs you can do, steering as well, um, it's going to just lead to a much better, a much safer, and just overall more enjoyment when it comes to driving a manual. It takes time. I wish there was an overnight success story there, but there's not. But as always, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The more time you have doing it on that particular platform, it's going to pay dividends in the future. All right, so the fifth and final point I want to touch on is going to be don't shy away from driving manual. I promise you, it's not too terribly difficult, and I also promise you, the more you do it, the better you will get. And once you start to do it and you start to really understand what's going on, it is a blast. There is a reason why people like myself buy a manual over an automatic. And there are a lot of reasons, but one of which, and I think most people would probably agree, you feel so much more attached to the car. You're doing something to make that car go, to shift that car, to be in the power band as you're coming, apex in a turn or whatnot. It's super fun, and trust me, I get it. When you first maybe try to learn manual and then you don't do it again, it's pretty intimidating. And it is. It's just a lost skill that most people don't have anymore. But what I can promise you is that if you are given a single opportunity or multiple opportunities to drive a manual transmission car, do it. It's something just like anything else. Instruments, for example, it's something that you learn as you go. You get better as you go. You get more confident, and you start to lose that. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm not driving it smooth, or whatever. You just have to do it. And overall, man, just have fun with it. It's a cool skill to have. I mentioned earlier in the video, I taught two of my buddies that were in town this weekend how to drive stick on my Ranger. Sure as hell not the WRX, but they were just like enamored by the idea that I drive a manual, two manuals. But anyway, it's a good time. It's a lost art, and I really encourage you guys to do it, whether you have a manual transmission car, maybe a buddy has one. Ask them to teach you. It's a lot of fun. It's a lost skill, and it's, I don't know, it's a good time. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video today. I'm actually headed to Las Vegas tomorrow. So I have filmed this in advance, schedule it for you guys. Don't want you guys to go a week without a video. So thank you in advance for all of the views, likes, comments, subscribes. That's not even a word, but whatever. Anyway, guys, until next time, peace.